Warm greetings. Welcome to Wednesdays for Water. We are a citizens collective aiming to walk and talk water. We try to meet every week and connect people with various water worries and wisdoms. And in the process, we wish to curate future water warriors. The way we talk about trivial things for hours, water too needs walking and talking to address the rising water distresses. The way Wednesdays for Water is conceptualized as a prime time show, it wishes to make water everybody's business. The idea of the series was conceptualized in August 2020, and by the end of the year, the team and the structure was pretty much in shape. We started in April 2021 with Dr. Rajendra Singh's inaugural speech. We wish to bring science and society together, and therefore we try to bring in every session either a policymaker or practitioner and a researcher or academician. We also think that future generation is crucial and therefore they have presence in each session. We are going stronger with every week now with session on either quiz, couple of weeks of hard talks and a week of soft session of art and music. There is a simple structure for each session of quiz, hard session and soft session which are moderated by the core team member. Here is a glimpse of what we call as hard sessions and soft sessions. Besides walking and talking water, worries and wisdoms collectively, we see this as a platform to cross-connect and expand our network and explore possible collaborations. We are also making notes to publish both scientific and non-scientific work. Here is a glimpse of some of our writings. You may reach us through email, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also look at our website www.w4w.in. We look forward to your suggestions and comments to make the series more meaningful and engaging. And meanwhile, we hope that you appreciate today's session. So again, welcome to Wednesdays for Water. In yet another interesting session. Today we are going to talk about riverfront developments in India. And we have with us Manoj Misra ji, a very well-known environmentalist. We have Professor Venkatesh Datta, and we have Neha Sarvate from Baroda. So before I introduce each of our panelists, I would like to take you through a short background of why we are having this session today. Importantly, we are celebrating Rivers Day all over the world in this week. So that's one reason why we are doing it. Another reason is that we are actually having a lot of riverfront developments in the country at this moment. And we have also gone into riverfront developments using a panacea approach. And where I am sitting today holds the panacea of riverfront development in the country. And that is Sabarmati Riverfront Development in Ahmedabad. So greetings from Ahmedabad as well as greetings from all the Wednesdays for Water team to all of you present here, apart from the speakers. Importantly, that this topic is required to discuss is Sabarmati a good riverfront to be copied all over the country? I was just reading High Court's judgment a few days ago, which says that Sabarmati riverfront with the river is not a flowing river anymore. So we have to look at whether we are doing riverfront for river or for what. We need to question that. Now, I live in a small town in Chhattisgarh, which is Bilaspur. And interestingly, Arpa river of that city is also trying to be like a big Sabarmati river and going through riverfront development. We can go on with the list. We have riverfront in Lucknow. Gomti is going to be discussed by Professor Venkatesh Datta. We have riverfront in going on in Pune, in Nagpur, in Nashik now, which is going to be undone, what was there before and new will be coming up, and so on and so forth. Last week I was in Varanasi and I see River Varna is also going through riverfront development in the lines of Sabarmati. So it makes me very curious At one point, this top-down approach of what is riverfront, and then at another point to look at from the people's perspective, from the environmental perspective, from the scientific perspective, from the conscience and the common sense of how to deal with river. With these lines, I will set the floor for all the speakers, but before that, I like to start with introducing Mr. Manoj Misra, who actually does not require too long an introduction. He's a very well-known name amongst all of us in the field of environment. But just briefly, he's the Executive Director of Peace Institute of Charitable Trust and convener and head of the Yamuna GA Abhiyan. If you are working on river and you are working on water, you must have come across the critiques and the write-ups and the voice of Manoj Misra ji at some point in time. The Yamuna Forever campaign is almost attached to his name now. Then we have Professor Venkatesh Datta, who is professor at School of Earth and Environmental Sciences, Baba Bhim Rao Ambedkar University in Lucknow. And interestingly, he's writing a book on riverfront developments in India. So that's how you know why these two guys are here with us and enlighten us further. We have young Neha Sarvate, who is from Baroda, and she is an architect, environmental planner, a visiting professor at MSU Baroda, and an associate professor at Navrachana Institute of Architecture and Planning. So we have these three people, and we would like to start with Manoj Misra ji, because he has been voice of the river for many of us now. So Manoj ji, I would like to know both from an environmental perspective and from a person, as a citizen, common citizen, how do we perceive riverfronts today? Over to you, Manoj ji.
Thank you. Let me start by sharing my screen. Right. First of all, thank you very much for that very, I would say, a nice introduction. But just for information of everybody, that I am now no longer associated with Peace Institute Charitable Trust. I'm retired from there.
Okay, sir.
So now my full-time attention is to the Yamuna River and other rivers in the country. Okay, you see, is this okay if I keep this like this? Because yesterday in another, when I made it full screen, there was an issue. But let me try.
It works, sir. It's working.
Okay. Okay. So as we see riverfront development in India, we see it as another imported fad. And rivers of India have been victim of so many imported fads. This is the, I think, the latest amongst them. Why I say so is this. You see, the model of riverfront development in India, and when they have always been speaking of Yamuna, they have been saying, oh, if Yamuna can be, if Thames can become Thames, then why can't Yamuna be like Thames? So this is the model. But you see, if we look at it closely, is it truly a river anymore? Or is it a canal? Because there is no floodplain, there is no riparian edge, there is no riparian vegetation or whatever there. It is just a canal, so to say. And the cost of this conversion of their river into canal is so huge that today London has to spend 5.2 billion pounds in next 6 years for its flood defense. So a role that the floodplain was playing free of cost. Now the Londoners have to pay this much for being for making themselves flood proof. Now, so what is the canal front and what is the characteristic? The characteristic of a canal front is obviously that there are two banks, they are either solidified or they are concrete. There is no floodplain or any riparian buffer or biodiversity. Look at किसी भी नहर को, किसी भी canal को आप देख लीजिए. This is what it is. And there is presence of flowing water in it 24/7, preferably, but no flood. So they want water, but they don't want any floods to take place there. So this is a canal on the banks of which you can create a canal front. But what are our realities? Realities of monsoonal India and our rivers. So while it may be okay to look at Thames and look at Seine and other Danube and whatnot, but we in India and our rivers in India are very different, very unique. And that is because of our monsoonal climate. Because for 3 months we get wonderful rainfall, our rivers are full, but that is only 3 months. So we have multi-channels in our rivers. We have vast floodplains because of that huge runoff that our rivers see during the monsoon, and we have a vibrant riparian buffer. But once the monsoon is over, then there is almost a cessation of rainfall activity, and our rivers only see their base flows, if at all. Most of our rivers nowadays do not see any even any base flow anymore. So resultantly, traditionally, our riverfront had been our ghats. And these are two representative ghats, one on Ganga and another on Yamuna. The Ganga at Varanasi and the Yamuna at Vrindavan. And the purpose of these ghats was primarily they were stepped, and it was to enable people to access the river. That was the basic purpose for meeting their various needs. Then, very important point is that these ghats were always built on the higher bank of the river. So you look at Ganga at Varanasi or Yamuna at Vrindavan or Yamuna at Delhi or Agra or Mathura, wherever, it is always the higher bank where you find this kind of stepped facility. And because the other bank was left just like that, nothing was done there. So the floods were free to come and go. And as it is, because this was a higher bank, so the flood here was, as it is, not very extreme. So the floods were free to come and go. And then floods could easily wet these steps. And that wetting of the steps also helped people to keep the flood record. भाई इस साल में इतना flood आया था, and so people knew when the floods had come. So this was the primary purpose of our ghat, our traditional riverfronts. But we have an exception in Haridwar, where at Har Ki Pauri, where everybody goes there and takes a bath or do their other rituals. Is it an exception? No, because this is actually a canal front. This is not the Ganga in Haridwar. The Ganga in Haridwar, this is a canal front of a canal that has originated from Bhimgoda Barrage. This is the Bhimgoda Barrage, and this is the canal, and this is the Har Ki Pauri riverfront that you have. So it is a canal front in Haridwar. It is not really, and it has been created as a canal front. So on both the banks, you have these structures. But a large number of people are unaware of this fact. Now, but if canal front development in our country is a must, then what is required? We will need to first convert our rivers or select stretches of them into a canal. So we will have to canalize them. जो multi channels हैं उनको single channel बनाना होगा. So that is one thing. The second is, then because most of our rivers do not have any water, so we will have to rob water from somewhere. तभी पानी आ पाएगा, otherwise तो पानी होगा नहीं. And the worst case example of this is the so-called Sabarmati riverfront, river within inverted commas, in Ahmedabad. And what it is? As we understand, this is outright violence against nature. And it is a land grab and water grab. This is a classic case of land grab and water grab. How? This is only 10.5 kilometer stretch of the river, which has been treated as a developable real estate. Concrete embankments stand on either bank. Natural channels whose minimum width was 30 meters has now been converted into a uniform 265 meters. Water has been robbed from Narmada Canal. See, it was Ahmedabad in that sense was lucky to have Narmada Canal already passing through, going over the Sabarmati. And so it was very easy for them to extract water from that canal. Whereas the fact is that the Narmada award had not made any provision for this kind of water supply. So this is totally unauthorized extraction of water from the Narmada Canal. So this is actually a Narmada Canal, not a Sabarmati, not even a Sabarmati Canal. Rupees 1400 crores had already been spent by 2019, and it is just a rectangular pond which ends at the Vasna barrage, and 500 acres of the river land has been reclaimed, so-called reclaimed. How do we reclaim land from our river? जिनको हम माँ कहते हैं, उनसे हम लैंड रिक्लेम करने का कोशिश करते हैं या रिक्लेम करने का क्लेम करते हैं. How can we ever even think of doing such a thing? And thousands of families who are dependent, who are stakeholders, who are dependent for their livelihood on whatever was Sabarmati there were removed. So this used to be the Narmada at one point of time, Sabarmati at one point of time in Ahmedabad. And this is the myth and this is the reality. The myth is, it is beautiful, but all that glitters is not gold. Because this very thing which is beautiful becomes like this when you have a real flood. So all that 1400 crores that you have spent, have you done this for this kind of a situation? And then this is the river Sabarmati downstream of the Vasna barrage. So 10.5 किलोमीटर का क्या मिराज खड़ा किया है हमने? Why is this? And then we say we have restored or rejuvenated river Sabarmati in Ahmedabad. Is it rejuvenation? कैसा मजाक है ये? Now, but as a result of that, and obviously the the politics of the nation that we have at this point of time. This is Sabarmati riverfront model is the model, and so there is a scramble among different city managers to replicate it, left, right, and center. We have Lucknow that my friend Venkatesh Datta, who is a true expert on riverfront development in the country, he would be speaking more on this in much greater detail. Patna, Pune, Baroda, Nasik, Nanded, Shimoga, Surat, Ujjain, Jammu, Bilaspur. You see, you are from Bilaspur. I started my service from Bilaspur. Guwahati, Mumbai, and what not. So there is literally everywhere they want to replicate. But is it really possible to replicate? Look at Patna. This is the Ganga in Patna. Can you replicate Sabarmati here? आप इस गंगा को कैनाल बना सकते हो, कैनाल बनाने का सोच भी सकते. It is even engineering wise impossible. But what they have done, they have created this. They have created this riverfront और नदी दूर चली गई है. There is no river there. नदी दूर चली गई, but they have spent money to create this kind of a riverfront. Sorry. So what they have to do now? इस नदी में से पानी चुरा के, अपनी नदी में से पानी चुरा के इसके साथ साथ बहाना पड़ेगा, जिससे कि इसको जस्टिफाई कर. क्या मखाल. Now Yamuna in Delhi. This is my river. 1893 and 1990, 100-year difference. And what we have done in 1893, Yamuna was the prominent feature. It was because of Yamuna that Delhi came here. शाहजहानाबाद यमुना की वजह से यहाँ बनाया गया. It is not the other way around. But today, after 100 years, Yamuna is begging Delhiites and the river managers, let me live and let my whatever floodplain is still there, let it remain. So this is the situation. This is what we call as civilizational growth. Is this civilizational growth? Have we really developed? Now, but still, can there be a silver lining? Fortunately, yes. Because in Delhi, we don't call it riverfront development. We call it Yamuna Floodplains Restoration Project. So this is a Yamuna Floodplains Restoration Project. And thanks to a NGT judgment in 2015, that DDA or whoever authority is there, they cannot construct anything in the floodplain. Construction of any kind has been prohibited. Although there are things that are already standing there, but that is prior to the judgment. And as a result, thanks to DDA, they have planned their things quite well now. And what they are planning is, see, there was this stretch of floodplain, a remaining floodplain, because people had invaded and created human habitation all around it. So they gave this land to Professor Babu and his team to restore. And this is how they have restored it. It's really wonderful work that they have done. And this kind of restoration is now being planned all over this 22-kilometer of urban stretch of this total 52-kilometer of river in Delhi. So this is how it is being planned. We hope and we wish that they actually do the right thing. So it can be done if it is done in an ecological, sensitive manner. Although the fact is that rivers don't need to be developed. River knows how to how to create its own riverfront. So, and nature does not require any embellishment. हमारे पास इतना ना स्किल है ना साइंस है कि हम नेचर को सुंदर बना सकें. No. Now, this is my final slide. The lament of Indian rivers today. गर्दिश में सितम कम न थे कि तुमको भी आना लाजमी था. As if our travails weren't enough, that you had to also come. And that this you is the riverfront development programs and projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manoj sir. You not only raised a lot of pertinent questions, but I want to also add to what you were talking about, especially for Sabarmati, is actually recently you must be aware that the 5-kilometer stretch has been increased to the model Sabarmati development. So a 400-kilometer long river is only getting importance in 20 kilometers, which is also speaking about the disparity in the way we look at humanity and who should benefit how much. But I will, yeah. So these kind of developments are actually increasing gaps in the society much more. We have urban-rural gap now with riverfronts. We have other gaps apart from water availability, because as you rightly mentioned, land grabbing and water grabbing is part and parcel of the riverfront. What surprises me, because you also raised Haridwar case, what surprises me about us, that how do we pretend all the time that we are actually taking a dip in Ganga, whereas most of the people in the country knows that it is not Ganga. A couple of years ago in Kumbh, people were taking snan, Kumbh mein naha rahe, and then the water was from Narmada. So how as a society also we keep pretending and we keep submitting to the ideas which are imposed on us in terms of riverfront. I have seen Gomti before riverfront, and I had the privilege, or unfortunate privilege, I must say, after the riverfront to see it. And maybe Venkatesh, you will take it further from here to maybe unscratch some of the wounds we have got in Gomti. Please, over to you, Venkatesh, you can take it further.
Thank you, Mansi ji, and thank you, Manoj Mishra ji. It was really wonderful to have a very brief, context. I agree completely whatever you say, and for the last 15 years we have been working on Gomti River, and we surveyed the entire river way back in 2011. It's a 960-kilometer long river. It's a groundwater fed river. It doesn't get any water from snow melt. So the river, whatever water that you see in the water is groundwater, right? So let me share my screen. I have made a small presentation. So share. Can you see my slides?
Sure, yes, we are able to see. Go ahead.
So I'll take you to this journey of how the riverfront development projects threaten the ecological or the fluvial ecosystems of Indian rivers. And I call it conversion of a free-flowing living river to a walled urban canal, right? Because everything is built and there is no breathing space left to the river. I wrote some of the articles, so you could also see on the. So this is the river in Lucknow. It is 960-kilometer long, the total length of the river, but in Lucknow we have around 58 kilometer, but this city stretch, city is roughly about 28 kilometer, which is more built, but still a lot of space was there before 2015 when this riverfront project started. And the river had a very natural sort of landscape with connected fluvial systems of riparian corridors, terrace, wetlands. And you could see here, it was a meandering river, highly meandering, that the Britishers used to call it Gomti River, just like it takes sort of many curves, right? So, and what you see, what Manoj Mishra ji was talking about, how this, settlement on Varanasi came on the concave side, which is on the higher terrace, and this is the convex side, and the river would make its own front. And that is how you see here the entire range of mosaic of trees and plants and shrubs and grasslands that the river has created across thousands of years of fluvial cycles of floods and droughts. And we must respect that character of the river in totality. So I was interested to see how the river is changing even now within the urban landscape. You see, this is the Gomti River in Lucknow, and I took satellite pictures from 2000 onwards, and the river was so dynamic that even today, you see there are, paleo channels and oxbow lakes, and river would take sometimes during the flood of 2008, many channels got revived. So our rivers are very, very different. And after the riverfront development project, what happened? Uh, let me, there was a reduction in channel width. You see how the channel width got reduced? This was before the riverfront project, and this is after riverfront project. And see this channel width, I'll show you in my subsequent slides. This is a typical river cross section here. What you see is just the main channel. Whenever you go across the sides of the river, you see the main channel, but there are riparian connected buffer on both sides, the concave side and the convex side, and there are connected riparian wetlands. And during the flood, the overland bank, the bank spills would also go to these connected water bodies and fill, and there would be a exchange of sediments and materials and the plants and the seeds, and that is how the river came into being. There is a very interesting case study of Bishan AMK Park in Singapore. There was a project called ABC Waters, Active Beautiful Clean Waters, and they wanted to restore a small river. This was before what you see on the top of the picture. They had earlier concretized the river, but they dismantled everything and they again restored this river back to what it was before. But in India, we are just doing the reverse. So this was the after restoration. This was earlier all concrete channel. Now I will give you the arguments, or I will present why riverfronts are disastrous for Indian river systems. First of all, riverfronts are not for tropical rivers. What Manoj Mishra ji was saying, it is an imported model. It does not fit for rivers that swell up during monsoons. Look, this is Sabarmati River and this is Gomti River. We have mapped the historic flood records based upon the HFL, and there are marks also, there are stories. You could even construct the flood lines based upon the records of the temples that used to be around the banks of the river, and we have mapped the actual inundation of water during the last 200 years. But some of our engineers went to see rivers like Thames and Danube and Seine River, and they got so much inspired that they wanted the same thing back in Lucknow with all those, London Eye and very concrete urban space. Now, secondly, as Mishraji was telling, that rivers would make their own fronts. They would make their own terraces. They would make their own corridors. And that is done through various fluvial processes. They are quite dynamic process. And if you do not allow the rivers to maintain the fluvial integrity, what would happen to the fronts and the terrace and the entire Ganga alluvial plain that came into being after thousands and thousands of sedimentation and erosion, and the alluvial plain was created. So the river would make their own fronts. And thirdly, what you're doing, you are weakening the resilience of the river. You are eroding the fluvial memory of the river. The entire resilience of the river, including the river processes, they are hampered, they are altered, they are weakened through this man-made riverfronts. Why? Because the concrete, look at the time scale of the concrete structure, maybe 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and look at the fluvial memory. I'll tell you the incision of the Ganga happened during the Holocene and the Pleistocene period, and similarly during the time scale around, like say about maybe 15 million years back. the entire the coming of the Ganga alluvial plain, and then last early Holocene. So the entire fluvial incision that we see as the heritage, the river corridors, that took thousands and thousands of years to establish. Fourthly, I would again talk on resilience. Why resilience is important for a river? If you disturb the state and stability of the fluvial ecosystems, you are in problem. Firstly, the localized episodes of floods are dissipated. The rivers will not have this flooding behavior. The water will not spread on the terrace. And the small scale catchment scale disturbances, they have large upstream, downstream consequences. I was talking to an engineer who was behind this riverfront. We had a huge argument. He said, river is 960 kilometers. We are just doing this riverfront on a span of 8 kilometers. So I said, suppose if I replace a small portion of your intestine with a plastic intestine, just 1 centimeter, what would happen to your body? So you must regard rivers as the living system, as the living entity. So even disturbing a small segment will have large scale, perturbations. And when you talk about the resilient ecosystem, the resilient ecosystems are those ecosystems that could handle the shocks without being damaged beyond repair. And the rivers have attained that system over thousands of years. And that has happened through adjustments of its slope, the sediment profile, the entire cross section. And that has taken again, thousands of years. And you disturb the entire cross section in a span of few days. Fourthly, the river fronts do not respect heterogeneity. And what I mean by heterogeneity is the mosaic of habitats that you see across the banks of the rivers. They are all wiped out. I have surveyed the entire river systems, and we had beautiful sand banks, we had beautiful vegetated banks, riparian buffers, and the wetlands, connected ditches where the fish should survive, the toads and all those, the amphibians and the reptiles, they'll have that sort of buffer space, but that has gone. The entire morphological variability that the river had maintained across time and space is gone with just one, strong, what you call the concrete infrastructure. So these are the habitat types we surveyed. There were 8 habitat types in the city stretch of the Gomti River, right from open river to deep pools, to backwater shallow pools, to scour pools, to channel confluence, to wetland connected ditches, grassed banks, well vegetated banks, and they were all erased. And now in the channel section, only 2 habitat types are there, that is open river and deep pools. So the riverfront will not like a heterogeneous mosaic system, which is characteristic of the tropical rivers. And many of we lost fish. I have surveyed, some of my students have surveyed the fish across the river, across the length of the river, including some of the tributaries. And the rivers do not like this urban stretch. They either migrate upstream or go downstream. They do not like this zone of dead, water. Fifthly, river fronts will not even like flow variability. Variable flow regimes, I call it VFR. What is variable flow regime? Variable flow regimes, rivers have many flow regimes, sometimes sluggish flow, very lean flow, high flow, like very high flow, like flushing flow. The river would clean itself within a day of, within few days. In just 15 days, the entire river would clean herself because there's a flushing flow. And that variety of flows, variability of flows, they are characteristics of the Indian tropical rivers. But the river fronts, they will not respect the legitimacy of flow variability. It will just wipe out the dry phase and the wet phase of a river with just single flow type. That is, you impound the river and maintain just a pool of water confined by barrage or weirs on both sides of the riverfront. And what about same designs? The engineers, the architects, they look both sides of the river as the same sort of artifact. Just like our 2 hands look same, but I perform different functions with my left hand and right hand. Similarly, the river fronts, when you see a river, the concave side is very, very different than the convex side. It is the convex side where a lot of deposition of finer sediments would be taking place where the concave side would be slightly higher, which is prone to erosion, but same design for both this side. That means they do not understand about the river morphology. And the seventh point, riverfronts have promoted elite urbanism. I call it elite urbanism. It's a new sort of urban where the new architects like Bimal Patel and all those, new designers, they try to do not respect the fabric and this the composite culture, even the heritage and the ecology, how they are connected with each other. They do not like, because they like to change. And just now I was going through an interview of Bimal Patel, who was architect behind this riverfront. He said that let the heritage not paralyze the architecture. Similarly, the architect, the civil engineers, they are not paralyzed by ecology, right? So riverfront development promotes the idea of elite urban space. It paralyzes ecology, it paralyzes heritage, and it is more about real estate and certainly not about the restoration and rejuvenation. It is a cosmetic beautification. Now, there is a fact about urban river. Are you joking? There's nothing called urban river. A river is a river, just like rose is a rose. And river must be seen as a living entity, right from the headstream to the downstream to till the delta. But here, there's a fashion of categorizing a river into urban, which is a bad science. A catchment may be urban. Your catchment is rural, your catchment is urban, it is peri-urban sort of interface is there, but river is certainly not the urban. If you give an urban tag, it attracts real estate, it attracts the the market, a lot of negative externalities. And my ninth point is the loss of place-based collective memory. Now I'm telling it from my heart, because this was my favorite site where you see here, I used to take boat ride right from here, and this boat would go till here. But now we have erased such collective memory from our conscience. Lot of disengagement, spiritual, mental, physical disengagement with the entire cultural landscape. This was before the riverfront. I think it was in 2014. I'm taking a boat ride just right here. So a lot of ghats were erased. Many ancient ghats like Devraha Ghat, Lallumal Ghat, Shani Mandir Ghat, many ghats were there, but you cannot access the water because there's a big wall which will prevent from going downstream. And the last point that I wanted to emphasize, that the river fronts would treat all tributaries, small channels, as the sewage canal, as the sewerage system. All these smaller rivers which used to bring fresh water, now they are nalas, they are drains. So that means the river fronts would try to legitimize all these stormwater carrying channels, the third order, the second order streams into sewer channels. And I can tell you, I'll give you some example here. This is the place called Harding Bridge or Pakka Pul, from where the riverfront started till downstream 8.2 kilometer downstream from here, this place. So this was the starting point. And here is a tributary, you see Kukrel River. Now it is called Kukrel Nala. It is a 27-kilometer long river system which is coming from a Jankipuram forest, a reserve forest. But see here, the outfall of the Kukrel into Gomti was closed with silt, and this was covered with cement. And this is how you kill a tributary and convert into sewage canal. This was before the riverfront, how the Kukrel River is meeting. This is the Gomti River and this is Kukrel River, but now this is the situation. The Gomti River is right here and this is Kukrel River, and it becomes so ugly. One person recently lost his life just a few days back. He drove his car and this land was so slippery because of the growth of moss and algae that the car, slipped into this very deep channel, because they also excavated this channel to make way for this diaphragm wall. So this was the Kukrel drain, or now called Kukrel Nala. So what we are doing, we are hydrating economy by dehydrating ecosystem. We are disrupting natural flow regimes with hard infrastructure, right? So this was before the riverfront. Now there is a fancy point here, the riverfront side. and see the mosaic of different sorts of habitats, you know, the exposed channel bars and the vegetated banks and the sandbanks. And this river is known for turtles. Many varieties of turtles were there, and you could even see, if you're lucky, basking turtles on the sandbank. And there are even crocodiles. I just spotted, I think in 2011, two crocodiles upstream, just about 10 kilometers upstream from this point. But what happened? This was before 2011, and now this is, we have straightened this channel. This was meandering, concave and convex side, but look how we have robbed this floodplain, and we do not trust the fluvial landscape. We do not trust the hydrological resilience. And what happened? This was the starting point, that is the Harding Bridge, and we sort of close the river with an earthen dam because we wanted to excavate. And the first thing what we did, we closed this river by thousands of, you know, geosynthetic bags filled with hard clay, which was never excavated. They said that, okay, we'll excavate, but it is still lying there. And they made a small, you know, sort of escape channel when we created a lot of, you know, uproar that let the river flow. And we even sat on Satyagraha for some time, but they were not ready to listen. They said, okay, we'll make a small sort of escape channel and let the river go. But this was, the entire site looks so ugly now. Look, this is from the space, how the Google is capturing. This is the Harding, the new bridge that they have made. And this is the earthen dam, which sort of interrupted the entire river. So the ecology of rivers is irreversibly damaged through riverfront projects in India. And I'll show you now a few pictures. This was 2008. Same site is that you could see these buildings that was there. And this is Professor Jacob. He's no more now. He died 3 years back. He was a great scientist working on e-flows, environmental flows. And he came to Lucknow. I took him to Gomti River. He said, such a nice, lovely river, very pristine, and we could do this wonderful work. But sadly, now what you see is the carpet of water hyacinth most of the time, except just few days back before Corona, there was this, you know, Defense Expo. Now, during this is the same site. What you see here, you could see the building here. It was all covered with water hyacinth because the river is virtually impounded from both sides. So they flushed the water hyacinth and they imported water from Sharda River through Sharda Canal. And this is not the water of Gomti. This is water of Sharda, you know, Blue River, which is coming from upstream of Nepal. And there's a Sharda channel, just there's a escape channel called Madhoya Escape, where sometimes the river gets water augmented through this channel. Now, this was just after the Defense Expo was over. The river was back to the same state. And this is Sarang. I think he's also here, Sarang from Pune. He came to Lucknow in 2019. I took him to the downstream, just like Basna Barrage in Narmada, Sabarmati. We have a rubber dam at the end of the riverfront. And you see the situation here, all this dirty water. There's no improvement in the quality of water. So basically what we are doing, we have created a 16-meter deep wall. Can you imagine? 16-meter deep, heavily reinforced concrete wall with 32 mm iron rods. And this 11 meters goes, goes below the scouring depth, and the 5 meter above the scouring depth of the river. And to support this wall, you have the anchoring wall. So there are virtually, with the diaphragm wall, there's an anchoring wall, and the river was already jacketed from the both sides. Before the riverfront, there was this bunding, or the banda. Banda came in early, 90s, when the Gomti Nagar was established on this concave site. Now, so the river was first jacketed. Now there's a diaphragm wall, there's an anchoring wall, and between this banda and the anchoring wall, you have the interceptor drain. So virtually they have killed the entire river system here. The channel width, what you see here, was the space for recharging fresh groundwater to the aquifers. This is a groundwater fed river. Mind you, every drop of water is fed by the groundwater during the non-monsoon period. You know, the 8 months of the lean season that we have, it survives on the base flows. And the base flow index of the river is so high, 85%, 78%. That means 78 to 85% of the water that you see in the channel is coming from the groundwater. Now, what would happen if you seal this floodplain with a concrete structure and reduce the active channel from 285 meters to even 100 meters, sometimes from 300 meters to 100 meters. So what is the recipe for a perfect RFD project? Just like, Sabarmati, there's a common thread. First of all, you need a ponding regulator. You must regulate river through a rubber dam or a weir. Then you must rob water from somewhere, that is flow augmentation. Then thirdly, there should be a hard real estate interest, as the architects call them, as renewed urban space or the reclaimed land. And finally, there should be over dominance of channel engineering, the over spirited engineers and the land developers, because there are huge allocation of funds. So these are the recipes. So I'll just go through some of the pictures, how the breathing space of the river was being filled with concrete. This was the floodplain or the terrace. And sadly enough, this project does not require environmental impact assessment. Can you believe? When we complained to many authorities and we said that no EIA was done, there's no DPR. We even filed some of our friends for information on DPR, and through RTI they said Suchna de nahi hai, because this project will not come under RTI because there was some design which was made by some firm and they said it is a proprietary item. So I will not give you any information. So a public space was converted into a very private sort of elite space. And why EIA was not required? Because this every riverfront project in India is taken through township development project, building and construction project. The project proponent and the consultant, they are so smart that they will go through this route. And there is in this EIA schedule 8A and 8B, there's a rule that if your covered area is less than 20,000 square kilometer built up area and the covered area is less than 150,000 square kilometer, you don't need EIA, right? So what they said, they under calculated. They did a smart trick. They just calculated some areas like toilets, some common facilities, and they forgot to calculate the area of the diaphragm wall, the 11-meter deep and 600 mm, 0.6 meter thick wall on the both sides. When I calculated and told them, look, your constructed area is 1,78,200 square kilometer just for the diaphragm walls. Forget about other built space. So they went for ex post EIA, which was rejected because there was so much of uproar. But sadly enough, when the project was started, somebody filed a PIL based upon the reports that we were writing in the newspaper, and it was rejected by the High Court. And the High Court even said that it has become a fashion increasingly to look at new project articles and present petitions in the public interest, leaving the entire burden upon the court. So he was even penalized, I think, and he was asked not to file a PIL, and PIL was quashed. It was a big victory for the irrigation department. But what happened? There was a judicial probe committee after the riverfront was done, and one of the members, who is Professor U.K. Chaudhary, he's a retired river expert and professor from IIT BHU. He said it was a Sangatit Aprad. I mean, what you call the
collective crime.
Yes, the organized crime. The riverfront was not chook, but organized crime. It was said by a big interview. And IIT से पढ़े लोग अगर इस तरह की गलतियां करेंगे तो पाए, क्योंकि many of the designs were vetted by professors from IIT Roorkee, IIT Delhi. They were called to face the judicial probe committee, and they said, हमको पता नहीं था, हमको दिखाया नहीं, हमने साइन कर दिया. जब आपको पता नहीं है, आपको पता नहीं था, so it is just like an organized thing. Now, how the channel was straightened, I have taken many pictures through the drone. That time drone camera was.
Wind up, Venkatesh,
Yes.
because we
Maybe,
need a discussion with the discussant.
Maybe 5 more minutes.
Oh my God, because we have to finish in an hour. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll show you some of the pictures how this channel was filled. This is the diaphragm wall. This is the anchoring wall. You see the diaphragm wall and the anchoring wall. And worst thing was that the media was showcasing it as a beautiful, क्या कहें जनाब, इसको रिवर फ्रंट कहिए, सब कुछ सही हो जाएगा, समर जाएगी गोमती, निखर जाएगा पर्यटन, खूब गजीवो बनेंगे. तो everything was just like they became the spokesperson of the project proponent, and the voice of common person was lost. This was how the riverfront came. The entire, I'll just, this is the diaphragm wall, which goes 11 meter inside. What you see, this is 600 mm thick, and diaphragm wall, anchoring wall, and between this you have the interceptor drains. So what you see here, this was all imported clay, which is not even the sandy sort of natural soil of the river systems. So just few pictures and I will summarize. You could see here, I'll just go through. This was the interceptor drain.
It's scary actually. It's a very scary scene.
Interceptor drain.
We need a full day workshop on this, but it's very scary to see all the pictures in progress.
So this is how the river was converted into a built space. So I'm just going through, and now you see the carpet of water hyacinth, and one of the newspaper wrote, पुनर्मुस्को भवा, फिर से चूहा बन जाओ, शहर की जीवन रेखा जैसे हमने विभूषित किया था. And this is my last slide. हमने नदी की कब्र देखी है, अब यहाँ लोग सेल्फी लेते हैं. This is the point where river used to survive and live. So I stop here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Venkatesh, to take us through one river in depth. And that was the very idea that Manoj sir is going to talk about river front at large. And then Venkatesh is going to take us through one river. And mind you, he's just showing one river in the chronology of its development. And there are beautiful questions. Maybe Manoj sir and Venkatesh, you start answering them because there are quite a lot in the chat box, and I don't think we will be able to take all of them. We will try to take some of them. Before I go to Neha, I would like to actually request all of you with an apology that please stay around for the discussion after Neha's talk with the speakers. With Neha, there is some kind of alarm bell among us because we both come from architecture and planning background, and what Venkatesh and Manoj sir are showing shows to large extent that actually those of us who are involved in this kind of beautification, design and planning, we are actually not taught ichthyology, we are not taught ornithology, we are not taught ecology, we are not even taught hydrology. And I am very much aware of it, being involved in teaching in architecture and planning, that these subjects do not exist, and these words are not even discussed in our schools when these kind of projects are. The only word which is fancied in architecture planning is development, and then it is supplemented with economy. I know you have been in the forefront of talking about Vishwamitri River in Baroda, and you are also dedicating your life to it, and I'm also aware that you are doing PhD about it. I have a very sweet message from Professor Bernard Cohn. If you allow, I'll just quickly read it for you, because that will motivate you further to stay as you are, a strong woman talking about river's life. So this is for all of us, but also for you especially. This is so simple about river development. I'm quoting from Bernard Cohn now. Simply to make the sides of the river as natural as possible with stepped banks. Control the flow of the water and not stagnant water. And please play and respect the variable heights of the river. So those of you who may be knowing Professor Bernard Cohn, he has sent his greetings to all of us here from France, and he was the one who first conceptualized Sabarmati Riverfront as an ecological initiative. And what we see today is completely different than what we have. And based on that, Baroda came into picture, and my friend Bipa from Nagpur, who actually requested us to have this session, because Nag River is also going to go through riverfront in the Sabarmati model, and some of them are actually rising up to ask what is going on here. Because these kind of projects, as rightly mentioned by Venkatesh, that they don't come to the public forum upfront. Once it is done, then people come to know what is there. How did you face it, Neha, in Baroda, and how do you see it in future? Over to you, Neha.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manoj and Professor Venkatesh. And we all understand about the ecological value of a river, and a river is a system actually. And I do agree that this is an imported idea that unfortunately our brains have been so colonized that everything that is good, I mean everything that is in the West, for us that is good, and what we have, we have lost.
Neha, we are losing connection and your voice.
What we've had traditionally and culturally. Yeah, can you hear me?
Just now we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
Okay. So we had a similar, a very similar situation as what you see in Gomti and what was even proposed or is proposed in Pune. And we have a lot of our group members here attending this session. So we started writing. I mean, we met, we formed a collective group, and we started discussing and writing in the public forum and questioning about what is happening and what should happen and why it should not happen the way it is happening. Luckily or coincidentally, the bureaucrats heard us, they listened to us, and they withdrew the project. We also filed a court case with the NGT, and we provided hard facts and figures. And based on those facts, right from ecological facts to procedural facts to how the project proponents were going about it, or they were diverting.
Okay, we have lost your voice again. Neha. Okay, when Neha returns with her speech, we will take her right away. Until then, maybe we take one question from the Q&A from R. Gopakumar. Hello, sir. I know you have been attending our sessions, and thank you so much for doing it again and being with us. So he has already talked about EIA being conducted before. I can tell you about Sabarmati that there was an EIA before, but you heard, sir, how EIA has been, bypassed in case of Gomti. And I wish to tell you that EIA has been bypassed for most of them as a special purpose vehicle project, all this riverfront. Over to you, Neha. Then we'll take it take the questions further. Yeah, go ahead, Neha. Okay, we are not getting connection with Neha, so we can take the second question from Professor Shishir Rawal. Thank you, sir, for joining us. I know you have also spent all your life talking about water and ecology. Neha, can you hear us? Can you say something? Okay, we are not able to connect to Neha. Neha, can you say something, please?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Please go ahead. Continue. Yeah. I will take Shishir Rawal sir's question later. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. We are having bad weather here, so there's internet issues over here.
Same here. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was telling you about Baroda. We had a multi-pronged approach. We spoke the scientific language, we spoke the legal language, and we also did a lot of awareness and advocacy. We networked with the bureaucrats, the officials, and we tried to convince them. We were persistent in writing to them, and we just did not give up. So at some point, they were probably forced, they felt cornered and they were forced to withdraw the project. So fortunately for us, so far, Vadodara has been protected or has escaped this whole riverfront fad. So this is, for people who would want to know how we
Those.
do in Vadodara, and we'd be happy to collaborate and share our stories. But yes, it is very difficult. There is a lot of political pressure. There is a lot of pressure from the design community. Yes, I think planners, designers, and architects are to blame, because we are so used to the engineered way of life that we have forgotten the natural connect to the systems. And because and it's the whole aura of artificial intelligence and the whole technology driven mindset that we have, and we want everything engineered. We think everything that is engineered is good, and what is natural is not that good. Like, for example, everything that is elite is good, and what is tribal or natural is backward. So it is the whole mindset, and probably the capitalistic attitude is affecting us in a very big way. So I just like to ask Manoj, when we talk, and Venkatesh ji, that when we talk of riverfronts, and yes, I do agree that the river is not urban, but the catchments are urban or rural or peri-urban, but we do not look at the watershed as a whole when we're talking of, even if we're talking of riverfronts, we've never discussed watersheds as a whole. So what happens, be it Thames or be it any other river outside, when we look at case studies or when we look at examples, we rarely see what policies are applied upstream and downstream in those rivers, though they are rivers in the urban areas. And we tend to copy paste it, as it is into our scenario. So what do you think? I mean, why don't we consider the entire watershed and not look at the upstream areas or the upper watershed when we plan for riverfronts? That is one question that I had for both our speakers today. And when we say planned, our country doesn't have that much planning as such. I think it's the politicians and the bureaucrats who think they can plan projects, and professional planners are not engaged, or if there's only one particular mindset of professionalism that is engaged and implemented and applied. So what do you think about this whole mindset scenario? When you were dealing with,
sorry, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to know what are their experiences when they did, when Manoj is working with Yamuna and when Venkatesh is working with Gomti. I just would like to understand more from that.
Yeah, it's good. It's an interesting question, and also kudos to Neha and the entire team of Baroda. So on one hand, we did talk about architects and planners being responsible for this problem, but on the other hand, we also have to understand that there are architects, planners like you, Professor Shishi Rawal sir, and many who are actually talking about that this is not the right thing to do on urban, because this is all about urbanization and development. So kudos to you and your team, and everybody can actually reach out to Neha and their team because they have extensive documentation of the river. And important thing, there is a question in the chat box also. Important thing is that they actually questioned what's going on, which was not questioned in Gomti beforehand. Whereas people like Professor Datta and all questioned it all through it. But if the government is not telling us what's coming up, how do we question? But being Sabarmati, they are as a model for us. Baroda people questioned it and they stopped it, which is exactly what Nagpur people are also really wanting to do upfront, to ask the government. This is the simplest thing as citizens we can do. What is going on? Manojji, how do you think we can really change? Because Neha brings an inspiration from Baroda for all of us and a hope.
Okay. See, first of all, I must compliment Venkatesh ji for a very, I would say, very enlightening presentation.
Yes.
And Neha ji for, I've met Neha ji before in Pune and seen her presentation there on the Baroda thing. And it's truly inspiring the way she and her group and everybody has gone about and ensured that that project was actually withdrawn. Although the people in Pune continue to keep fighting for the Miti and Mula Miti, but the project still remains. But in Baroda, they ensured that. Talking of river and its planning and why the entire river is not taken into account and how this could be brought about. You see, it's from our own experience, it took us almost 15 years to make one judge understand that what river Yamuna really needed. And that bench at NGT understood that river in Delhi was not the only river. It was just a stretch of the river which is 1400 kilometer long river. And it's what is important for the restoration of that river is security of its catchment upstream as well as within the city of Delhi and downstream for the people who are living downstream. And if you were to read that judgment of 13 January 2015, it has addressed everything that a judgment requires to address for the restoration of any river system. That is the beauty of that judgment. And it's no credit to us because it is more credit to the understanding of that bench. Because, you know, for us, it is part of our professional life. For us, we have been studying and we have been reading and we have been talking about this all our life. But for them, it was just one of the many cases that they hear on a daily basis. But still, they went deep into it and they understood it and they provided the right roadmap, the right prescription. Now, the problem is, there is a roadmap, there are prescriptions. If they do not get implemented, what do? You see, a judgment is just a piece of paper until unless it is implemented. You, Nehaji, you have gone to, I guess, High Court and to NGT, and you are aware of this fact. So it is, I would say, it is the ecological ignorance of, I guess, everybody across the board, right from the highest executive to whoever. And then coupled with that is the eagerness or the hunger for making money. So it is a combination of, one is the ignorance and then use that ignorance to make fast buck. So it is corruption plus, I would say there are engineers who have got knowledge, but they would sell that knowledge. They would ignore that knowledge to make a fast buck. That is the main problem. And you spoke about things and what has happened to, because you know, there is a very famous book, The Lost Rivers of London.
Yes.
So same is, now we will have to in future write about the lost rivers of Lucknow, the lost rivers of Delhi, the lost rivers of Baroda, because every city, what we are today calling as a Nala, it is a river in its own right. And we are losing them very fast. During the course of this judgment, the Irrigation and Flood Control Department of Delhi was asked to tell more about these stormwater drains which originate from Delhi and feed the river Yamuna. And they said in the 1976 master plan, there were 201 such drains. And today they are unable to trace 14 of them. 14 of them have been either built over or they have just disappeared. So this is what is happening. This is happening by default, and it is also happening by design.
Yeah.
And what we have all to do together is to understand, and we have to be smarter than them. We have to be smarter than them in raising the right questions that they cannot find answer on, and then smarter than them in approaching the judiciary. I know at this point of time, even the judiciary is under a lot of stress, but times change. They will change. They have to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Venkatesh, would you like to take a question from Neha and some question from the question and answer? And maybe we open the floor after that for people to ask questions directly to any three of you. Yeah, Venkatesh, over to you.
I think it's quite pertinent, what Manojji was telling, that it is by design and by default. The worst thing that we did, that we gave rivers to irrigation department.
Yeah.
Do not have any single department that looks after river in totality. If I go to river bank, they'll say, okay, it comes under horticulture department. They do not understand about river. If I go to irrigation department, they think that river is a canal.
Yeah.
They treat both banks as just one, right? And irrigation department is so overstaffed that they like big projects.
Yeah, that's also
they do not like nature-based solution. I tell people that let the river flow. Flow is a master variable. River would cleanse herself in 14 days during monsoon. You stop damaging the river. River has amazing set of, I've seen rivers getting, back to life within a span of 10 days. But what we are doing, we are supporting the same old system of large irrigation department, large canals. Can you imagine? Uttar Pradesh has 74,000 kilometers of canal that survives on the Ganges and its tributaries. More than the river network, we have canal. And every year, we need budget for desilting the canals. And even though we have canals, people have the bore wells at the tail end because they don't get water when they need. So in short, first of all, we have to create a system where spirited and enlightened bureaucrats and engineers, they survive. In this system, 95% of the people who are like just, average, among those crowd, 5% they want to work, but they get very tough time. I meet some of my good friends are in irrigation department, very well trained, but they do not deviate because it is built in the system, right? Secondly, we do not have water sensitive master plans. Now the land revenue department, if I go and show them base map, they'll say, "Ye kya leke aaye ho?" We had hard time to convince one judicial member that it is not nala, it is river. And I gave them 1910 British archive from University of Texas. Sadly, all our maps are in other libraries. We have not even maintained the older maps. If you see the British Gazetteer, they have beautifully documented, but the land revenue have underestimated the length of rivers, streams. They have even forgotten the first and second, third order streams. It is not there in the land revenue records. So we have to, do a massive movement to give rivers legitimate right to have, to flow, to have a breathing space, and it should be done through institutional system, through correcting market failure, through judicial intervention. So we need a lot of mix of intervention. It is not very easy, and we are trying to do that, but it looks the task is not very straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I want to bring here a point from Haridwar because we are talking about saving rivers, and the people are trying different ways. I'm sure Manoj Mishra ji is already smiling, so he must be knowing about Swami Sanand ji and his disciples. There is a young boy sitting, Swami Atmabodhanand ji, sitting on fast for now 45 days. To save river Ganga. So it's a water satyagraha, jal satyagraha he's already doing, fasting. and I went to meet him, and they have very simple mang Viral Ganga, means let the river flow. And interestingly, we already talked about it, and through your presentation, that Haridwar is already not receiving Ganga water. So these are very interesting things, that why are we deceiving ourselves as humans to talk about riverfront and show something? It's like a lipstick and a facial on a very natural human being. And when we are talking about making it look beautiful, why do we want to redefine what is beautiful just for the sake of few people? Neha, I want to go back to you and also see if there are any hands raised. If you have any other pertinent questions for the speakers, or you want to throw some question open to the audience.
Yeah, I just had a few points to make. It is just that one is our education system. Engineering is hardcore, construction based education system, and I don't think the engineers are taught environmental sciences. Though it's become compulsory, but hydrology is not taught the way hydrology should be taught in an ecological perspective. Hydraulics is taught. So it is all about managing the flow of water. And I think rivers, like you rightly said, it's a living entity, and it's very dynamic in nature. So that nature is lost. And I think there's also a mindset that everything in the urban areas need to be engineered. There is no place for natural areas in an urban area, because the entire landscape in an urban area is modified. And these are some of the arguments I was told to in the favor of riverfronts when we were talking to the project proponents for Vishwamitra. So they always came and said that the entire landscape in the urban areas is modified. So where is nature in urban? And there is no space for nature in urban. So these are the kind of comments that people do give us. So what would you respond to these kind of comments?
I think it becomes very interesting, Neha, when you pose this kind of question open to all. Especially, I want to remind every one of us that actually we have land value all over it. When we talk about urban development, we are always talking about land development, and ironically, river is also seen as a land development project. And Venkatesh raised it very clearly that water was not even a concern, but it was more about real estate. Manoj sir also raised it that it is more about carving out land. So all the time we are actually valuing land over water. And when we have to really see what is the value of a river, you go to any engineer or any decision maker or any minister or any designer, architect for that matter, you will find them blank-faced. So we do have a value on land. इतने square meter का भाव चल रहा है, इतने square yard का भाव चल रहा है, इतने square feet का भाव चल रहा है. The moment it comes to a water body, it has no value, and that makes it very, very tricky, because on one hand, the moral value is priceless, but on the other hand, it is actually priceless. It is not valued to its true value, and that's where the problem starts with waterfront developments, where people have really looked at the value of the land, not at the value of the water. And mind you, right from dams, which Manoj sir had actually in his last slide, that riverfront was the last thing to appear after dams and all, we have not solved our water problems and all the promises which have been made by doing these mega structures. I had a situation in 2002 when all the city in Ahmedabad was flooding and the river was dry and the lakes were dry, but the city was flooding. It is because of the way we have planned the land. We did not plan the water. So I think we are already going 20 minutes ahead of the proposed time for the session. But still, I would like to take one question or two. I see Professor Shishir Rawal has a lot of questions. In fact, you can teach us a whole class for all of us. Now, good evening, sir. Maybe you may ask the question in person. That will be good, and be brief about it. Sir, are you still around? Shishir sir? Okay. I see he's not
I think
responding,
he's
so
there.
I will take. Are you there? Is he there, Neha?
He's there. He's there. I see
Okay,
him.
so Shishir sir, would you like to ask the questions in person, because you have raised beautiful points in the Q&A, or maybe give some suggestions? Actually, you can give us class. So it's
Can you
good to hear you. Please go ahead, sir.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, because my audio system was not working. I do not want to take any time here. I think two wonderful people have spoken, and you both ladies have articulated other counterpoints and other points added to it. I'm just here as a student also, because Gomti and Yamuna are not as familiar to. Yamuna is because I studied in Delhi, but not since then I've been involved with it, except for the Central Vista project that I'm somewhat involved with as a group of people protesting it. Now, coming back to the idea that we are discussing these points, I have, in my question and answer, I have posed this question to both the presenters. What are the root causes of crisis related to rivers and nature? And or you can answer, what are the desirable measures that citizens, civil society, professionals, government should take on priority basis? What kind of catalysts do we need to sustain these efforts? Now, these are broad questions, and it cannot be answered in the next 2-3 minutes. But one of my pet peeves is that people who are talking about rivers or nature have not taken a single serious ecology course in ecological sciences. And that is one of the reasons the ecological illiteracy that Manoj spoke about is very, very crucial part of this thing. And we for example, even Venkatesh spoke about resilience, but there is another concept in ecology which is called resistance. And that is also an ecological concept. And we have gone on to the bandwagon. The bandwagon was eco-development in the 70s and 80s, and then it was taken over by sustainable development, then it was taken over by ecological urbanism, and then it is now recently sponge city and all that. It is old wine with new bottles, because that is what get grants for the teachers and the scientists. Ultimately, it is about living and designing with nature. And if we do not study ecological sciences, both from the humanistic perspective of human ecology and social ecology, as well as from the perspective of natural systems, we are going to go around beating around the bush. And these diagrams, these engineering measures, these beautiful case studies, both the speakers presented, for us who want to make a difference, we cannot make a difference until we know ethics and ecology. And we need to, in my opinion, we need to make ourselves stronger from within to be able to do the good fight with the help of people like Rohit Prajapati and my other colleagues in Vadodara. We were able to do that because we were a team. We devoted our time, our sweat equity, so to say, consistently and persistently, and that is why we could stop the VRDP project. So the last two questions, if any of the speakers or any of the members in the audience want to ask, I'm highlighting that in the question answer box. If anybody wants to say anything about what I have just raised the questions or my comments, I will really welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rawal. There are some questions posed by Professor Rawal in the question and answer. Manoj sir, do you want to take it? Because I saw you were just raising it. Go ahead.
Yeah. You see, first I would like to answer Neha ji when she said that when people say, where is nature in cities anymore? And how do we respond to this? I think if I were in your place, I would ask them two questions. Are you yourself living? Are you part of nature or not? And do you have in your house, even if it is the apartment, are you maintaining some plants? And if you are maintaining it, how can you say there is no nature in the city? So, you see, such statements when people make, they make with vested interest. It is as simple as that. Now, the other thing which I want to actually share here is with respect to river. Now, Since 1984, the Ganga Action Plan, 1984-85, until today, Namami Gange, all of us are obsessed with just one thing, that is pollution. Cleaning of rivers. We want to clean our rivers. We don't want to rejuvenate our rivers. We just want to clean them. Now, you see, and I see a huge vested interest here. Because as long as the focus remains on pollution, there will be large projects, there will be a lot of talk, there will be no progress. Everybody loves a sick river. See, I'm rephrasing the word
Yes.
but
It's a
everybody
narrative.
loves, yes, everybody loves a dying, diseased river because that is where the money is. But we have always been saying pollution is not a river issue. Pollution is a civic issue. Pollution is a city issue. Pollution is a home issue. Pollution is not a river issue. And please don't spend a single paisa in the name of taking pollution away from the river. You just let the river flow.
Yeah.
And you see, there is a vested interest to talk of pollution so that no one talks of flow. It is to keep the flow question away from the table, that they always keep on talking about the pollution question. Because pollution is an engineering thing. Flow is not an engineering thing. Flow is just to take away all the structures that you have created. And once you have the flow, you don't have to give anything to river. Let just the river be. नदी कहती है मुझे मेरे पर रहने दो, तुम मेरे से दूर रहो बस. And I am good enough to take care of myself. आपको ना रिवर फ्रंट बनाने की जरूरत है, ना एसपीवी बनाने की जरूरत है, कुछ नहीं. अपनी चीज अपने तक रखो, मेरे तक मत लाओ बस. Let me be. This simple thing, there is a strong vested interest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think these are very wise words, and importantly, we all have to know, let the rivers flow. I think that's where lies the punchline for any kind of river talking we go around and do. We are already 30 minutes ahead of the time we had promised for all of you. And I do send my apologies to all of you for this delay, but I'm sure you are enjoying this conversation. There are a lot of questions in the chat box. We will send you across to all the speakers and discussants. If you wish, you may send it to us, and we do have email IDs of all the people. We will try our best to cross-connect you and continue this conversation on riverfronts. And if there are any last line from anybody, they can put it in the chat box or say, Neha. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I see Mr. Rohit Prajapati has raised his hand. I mean, he was
Okay.
one of the special people for,
Sure,
to fight
we will take, okay, I have not seen that. So Rohit sir, can you please say yes? Oh, I see my hand raised. I'm sorry. Rohit ji, please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Please
I only want to take, it's a good discussion. I just want to bring very blunt and a very odd statement that when we talk it with reference to countering the riverfront and other thing which happening with the river, basically, unfortunately, we don't engage across the country. We don't engage with the state in detail, and we don't intervene in a right time. And also, we are not ready to respond every day. It's like many times when things come on the front, it's time to react every time. We cannot be part-timer or ad hoc to make intervention. And we always think that somebody is doing something and we will contribute my part. It's not my part. I think team has to work out something consistently to make intervention. Otherwise, courts are also not taking things seriously, and also obviously state and the people like Bimal will not look into all this. So it's a time to engage them fully with full-fledged, and we should not keep any one day like holiday for them. when we talk about when it's a situation like either Sabarmati riverfront or any new riverfront or something coming in front of us. Yeah, that is what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, sir, for this point, because that brings a very important topic for all of us, and that is also a follow-up session for Wednesday, and that we have to stand at the right time. We have to stay on that discussion with the government, with the designers, with whoever is doing it. That's important. And let me tell you, that is exactly what democracy asks us to do as citizens. We have to be there consistently asking right questions to the decision makers and the government. And water democracy has been a very core issue in subject of water. And this is exactly what we are going to talk about next week, next Wednesday. And we do have noted speaker. We all know about her. Dr. Kiran Bedi is our guest of honor speaking next week on water democracy. We are also trying to rope in somebody to talk about water Swaraj or Satyagraha in this month to commemorate Gandhi Bapu's month, which is 2nd October. So 6th of October, we have water democracy, which will actually help us to discuss some of the matters we are discussing today, as what as citizens, what as sensitive people, sensible people can really do ahead of time when these kind of development narratives are imposed on us. One part is that, of course, an awareness is required, and importantly, an awareness towards ecology is required when we talk about such things. But water is more than ecology as well. We all know that water management is society management, and rightly pointed out by both Manoj sir and Venkatesh, especially that water does not need our designing and planning. Water needs to flow. I want to remind all of you that there is a young boy sitting on fast for more than 40 days in Matri Sadan in Haridwar, Atmabodhanandji, to save Ganga. So this is one way of trying to really make yourself heard. And he is also talking about Aviral Ganga, which means let the river flow. So if we want to talk about riverfront and make it a kind of a discriminatory affair for urban elites, we really need to think about it again and again. Do take care of yourself. Go to your city and find out what's going on in your water bodies around in your city, and just make simple questions, make simple RTIs, make simple noise, and write a lot about what's going on. This is something least we can do as common citizens. Then and then only people will hear, and there will be a discourse. Ironically, there is not much discourse happening on water, and that was the purpose of actually initiating Wednesdays for Water. We are very happy to tell you that today we complete 6 months of Wednesdays for Water, and we are going very strong with every week. We have speakers lined up for next 2 months already, and now people come to us and say that we would like to organize one session. So you are also invited to give us suggestions. You are also invited to tell us that you would like to host this session. We are very open for that as well. So on behalf of the team of Wednesdays for Water, I'd like to thank all of you who are now remaining here, and also apologize for this delay, but I'm sure you have enjoyed this enlightening conversation. And last but not the least, I really want to thank Manoj Misra sir and Venkatesh Datta from the bottom of the heart, and my dear friend Neha, who is always encouraging me with her fighting spirit and really gives energies. You know, we like these kind of juniors around us who can tell us that we have to continue doing good things, what we think is right for our nature and for society. Thank you very much, all of you. Do take care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you Wednesday and next Wednesday and next Wednesday and Wednesdays to come. Thank you all, and please take care. Thank you, presenters, for joining us today and enlightening us with your wisdom. Also, thank you all the participants for joining us and making the session interactive. We quickly take you through the citizens who make this collective: Vibhu Prasad Nayak, Fauzia Tarannum, Ganesh Shankar, myself Mansi Bal Bhargav, Rajiv Shah, Gautami Baviskar, Manisha Sharma, Megha Gupta, Srinivas M.R. and Vasanta Subaya. We represent Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad, Terry School of Advanced Studies, New Delhi, Environmental Design Consultants Ahmedabad, FluxGen Sustainable Technologies Bangalore, Counterview, and we are supported by Wikis Water Resources Council. We truly appreciate your support and encouragement in conducting this series, and we hope that you will stay tuned with us through our social media platforms and our website, and you will write to us at our email IDs. Thank you once again to all of you. We look forward to having you in the next session. Please take care of yourself. Bye-bye.